Hi everybody, this is Anne. Artificial intelligence is all the rage right now. We were curious to see if it could serve a purpose for us in the Pottery studio. We picked one particular item, the egg cup, and asked AI to generate an image of it incorporating birds' heads. Here are some of the images it spit out. Okay, those were interesting, but not quite what we were looking for. Jim played around with the prompts to see if that made a difference. Now those are closer, but AI kept placing a design on the egg more than the cup, so Jim tried again. With each command change, the images were more what I had in mind. What we found was that AI really may have a place in the studio, not only as a source of inspiration for design, but as a tool for those who are more challenged to draw their ideas on paper. In this video, I thought it'd be fun to use the inspiration from those AI images to create my own original egg cup designs. I'll demonstrate how to get a nice fitting cup both on the wheel and in a hand building project. The challenge of making an egg cup is in creating a good fitted cup for the egg, so I thought I'd start by using a real egg as the model. I placed a sharp pointed bit into my rotary tool and drilled a hole into both ends of the egg. I then used it to try and puncture the yolk inside. It was then easy and a little gross to blow all the contents out of the egg. Yeesh, I guess we're having scrambled eggs for dinner. I know my clay shrinks around 14 to 15%, so I wanted to create a mold of the egg so the egg would fit snugly after being fired. I drew a line around the center of the egg, then I drew lines to divide the wide part of the egg into fourths. I created a template to fit that quarter section. All I had to do was fit the slab pieces around the egg for a nice mold. The challenge was that the clay mold would also shrink. So should I make the mold using a thinner 1/8 inch slab or a wider 1/4 inch slab for the best fit? Well, that's too much math for me, so I just made one of each to test. First, I'm going to show you how to create an easy egg cup on the wheel using a sort of deconstruction technique. My very generous friend Nancy gave me this cool Shimpo Aspire portable wheel, and I thought it'd be perfect for this little project. I started with about 10 ounces of clay. I wedged it and centered it on the bat. I coned the clay upward to the full height of the clay cup. I flattened the top and created a cylinder shape. I created an indentation at the top of the cylinder and slightly opened it up. Now I can use the bone-dry mold in that opening to create the right fit for the egg. The mold was just a little smaller than the opening, so I'm lifting and narrowing the rim. This time when I checked the fit, it was perfect. Now all I needed to do was trim away the excess clay around the cup and shape a pedestal for it to sit on. I'm just removing small amounts of clay at a time so I don't change the shape of the clay cup. Also remember that I'll be trimming this at the leather hard stage, so don't think you have to be aggressive with your trimming at this point. Once I got the shape I was pleased with, I dampened the clay and ribbed it smooth. I also smoothed the rim of the cup. I replaced the egg mold to the center to make sure it hadn't been distorted. I wired it off and let it set up to leather hard. Here's one I made earlier that's now leather hard. I centered it on the bat and secured it with lugs. I trimmed the rim so it was nice and clean. Using a smaller diamond core trimmer, I defined my border, then began to trim out the bottom so it mirrored the contour of the outer wall. Again, I cleaned up the rim and softened it so that it was the shape that I wanted. The clay was still a bit soft, but I'll show you how I wanted to decorate it. I started by tracing border lines first around the bottom section. I then traced more border lines around the top section, leaving an untouched middle area. I decided to cut away a V shape along the rim. I flattened out an arched piece of clay and attached it behind the V so it peeked up behind it. I created a beak shape of clay and attached that along with two coils, which will be the eyebrows. I attached two little balls of clay for the eyes. Using a sharp tool, I began to randomly texture the border areas along both the body and the foot, leaving the other sections smooth. Now here's one I created earlier, where I used underglazes to add color and bring him to life. I cleaned up my lines, then bisque fired it to cone 04. I used a white liner glaze to glaze the inner bowl section plus all the smooth areas. I used Amico clear glaze for the eyes and the beak for this cute little egg cup with a bird's head. Now I'll show you how to hand build a cup. I started out with about 3 to 4 ounces of clay and rolled it into a ball. I pounced it on the table to flatten out the bottom. I checked it against my mold. I wanted the clay to be at least 1/8 inches bigger than the mold all the way around the rim. Perfect. I then began to hollow out the center, working the clay down and inside, trying to maintain the diameter of the cup. I kept working until the mold fit into the cup snugly. Once I got the fit right, I turned over the cup and began smoothing it down with both my fingers and a rubber rib. With the mold still inside, I used a sharp X-Acto type tool and cut the bottom section off the cup. My edge was squared off and sharp, so I worked it down to the mold and softened it, which again left me with a ragged edge, which I then trimmed away. Now here's the egg cup that I wanted. I just needed to soften the edge a bit, so I wet my fingers and rounded and softened the rim. For this particular design, I decided to make a little body. I cut a ruler-sized strip of a clay slab. I fit the strip around my cup for the right size, then cut away the excess from the strip. I beveled the short edge of the strip, turned it over, then beveled the other short edge. I scored and slipped one of the edges, then attached the edges together. The cup should fit nicely into the body. I placed the mold into the cup, then gave it rigidity and kept it rounded, then placed the cup into the body. I created a flattened arch slab piece, which I placed at the front of the ledge of the body. I attached a tapered arch piece of clay along the back side like a bustle to the tail section of the bird, and attached that. Next, I worked the edge of the body into the sides of the cup part of the bird to attach them together. I created a mask-shaped piece of clay and attached it to the front top section where the eyes would be. I worked indentations into it for eye sockets, then pulled the sides of the mask out so it flowed better into the face. I created this beak shape using 2 triangular pieces of clay together. I fit that down between the eye sockets. I created little balls of clay for the eyes and fit them into the eye sockets. For feet, I narrowed down a long arched piece of clay and attached it at the front bottom. I used my sharp tool to disconnect the feet, then sculpt little claws. I used raindrop pieces of clay to create a feather pattern in the front under the beak and at the back over the tail. At bone dry, I painted him with the underglazes and carved away feather lines for this look. These were so much fun, I decided to create one more using the woodpecker as inspiration for the design. This one's a rough version. I needed to clean him up a bit. Now here's that first one I created. I glazed the inside and all around the imagery with my white liner glaze. I glazed the beak and the eyes with clear glaze for this adorable little guy. Now here's the woodpecker cup. I also used my white liner glaze for the inside of the cup and Amico clear C11 glaze on the eyes and beak and the rest of the body. In the end, when using AI, we learned that it wasn't a substitute for the creative mind of a potter, but it could be used as another tool when we hit an inspiration roadblock or when we feel the need to think outside of our box. Thanks to the newest members of our Little Street Pottery Research Facility team. If you'd like to join the team and earn a title, click on the Super Thanks button or the link to Buy Me a Coffee. Buy Me a Coffee now has an option for people to become a monthly supporter. We'd like to welcome the newest VIPs to our team. See you next time in the studio.